The let them theory explained. The 2 words that exposed how much of your life other people control. The simple rule that turns control back on yourself. Mel Robbins' The Let Them theory is built around a phrase so simple, it almost sounds too thin to hold a whole book. Let them. Let them misunderstand you. Let them cancel. Let them judge. Let them choose someone else. Let them be distant, moody, unreliable, dramatic, unimpressed, ungrateful, or unavailable. Then comes the harder part. Let me decide what I do next. Let me stop chasing. Let me stop managing. Let me stop auditioning for approval from people who are not even paying proper attention. Let me take my time, energy, dignity, focus, and ambition back. That is the emotional engine of the book. It is not really about other people. It is about the moment you realize how much of your life has been outsourced to their reactions. The big idea of the book. The big idea is brutally simple. Most people are exhausted because they are trying to control things that were never theirs to control. They try to control whether people approve of them. They try to control whether friends include them. They try to control whether partners text back quickly enough. They try to control whether colleagues respect them, whether family members understand them, whether strangers judge them, whether children follow the life path imagined for them, whether everyone around them behaves in a way that makes them feel secure. Robbins' answer is not to become passive. It is to separate reality from response. Let them means stop fighting the fact that other people are allowed to reveal themselves. Let me means decide what kind of person you are going to be after they do. The official description frames the book as a guide to stop letting other people's opinions, drama, and judgment control your life, and to break the exhausting habit of managing everything and everyone around you. The argument in one flow. The book begins from a recognizable modern problem. People are emotionally overextended. They are not only living their own lives, they are living inside everyone else's moods, opinions, decisions, expectations, and disappointments. A friend does not reply, and the mind starts building a courtroom. A relative makes a comment, and the whole day bends around it. A colleague behaves coldly, and the body reacts as if social survival is at stake. Robbins identifies this as a control problem. Not control in the obvious tyrannical sense, but control as anxiety. Control as emotional self-protection. Control is trying to prevent discomfort before it reaches you. You try to make everyone comfortable so you do not have to feel tension. You try to anticipate every reaction so you do not have to feel rejected. You try to manage the room so nobody turns against you. You try to influence people's choices because their choices seem to say something about your value. The theory interrupts that loop. Instead of arguing with reality, you say, let them. If people want to be late, let them. If people want to gossip, let them. If people want to misunderstand your motives, let them. If someone does not invite you, let them. If someone does not choose you, let them. If your adult child makes a decision you dislike, let them. If a friend keeps showing you they are not reciprocal, let them. The phrase is designed to create distance between event and reaction. It gives the nervous system a pause. It gives the ego something else to do, besides chase, defend, explain, punish, or collapse. That is why the idea traveled so quickly online. It gives people a tiny sentence they can use in the exact moment they feel themselves becoming hooked. A large part of the book's appeal is that it does not ask the reader to become enlightened. It asks them to notice the hook. The hook is the instant you make another person's behavior your emergency. Someone is rude. You spiral. Someone leaves you out. You personalize it. Someone makes a choice you would not make. You begin rehearsing speeches. Someone criticizes you. You start rewriting your personality to avoid future criticism. Robbins' message is that this is where power leaks out of your life. Not because other people are powerful, but because you hand them the steering wheel. The phrase "let them" is meant to return the steering wheel. The Washington Post described the core of the theory as releasing what you cannot control, especially other people's opinions, emotions, and reactions, so that you can reclaim time and energy. It also noted that the idea has spread far beyond the book into a lifestyle-like movement, with millions of English-language copies sold, and even "let them" tattoos becoming part of the cultural reaction. That popularity matters because the book is not presenting a complex new philosophical system. In fact, one of the fairest criticisms is that the idea is not new. The Washington Post connected it to older traditions such as Buddhism, Stoicism, and the Serenity Prayer. Robbins is not really selling novelty. She is selling usability. The difference between an idea people admire and an idea people actually use is packaging. Accept what you cannot control is true, but it can sound like a poster in a therapist's office. Let them is portable. It fits inside a conflict, a text message, a family argument, a workplace slight, a romantic disappointment, or a moment of embarrassment. The book works because it takes an old insight and gives it a trigger phrase. That trigger phrase is especially powerful in relationships. In friendships, the theory asks the reader to stop trying to force closeness where the other person has stopped showing up. If someone repeatedly does not make plans, does not check in, does not celebrate you, or only appears when they need something, the instinct is often to chase harder. The book argues that chasing harder usually hides the truth. Let them show you the relationship. Let them reveal the level of effort they are willing to make. Let them demonstrate whether the bond is mutual or one-sided. Then comes, let me. Let me stop investing at a level that is not being returned. Let me redirect energy into people who actually want to be present. Let me stop turning low effort into a mystery I need to solve. This is where the book becomes sharper than the phrase alone. Let them without let me can become resignation. Let them plus let me becomes decision-making. The same pattern appears in dating. A person ghosts, delays, keeps options open, gives mixed signals, or refuses clarity. The anxious mind wants to decode everything. It wants to know why. It wants to win them back into consistency. It wants to believe there is a hidden explanation that will make the behavior less humiliating. The theory says, let them. Not because their behavior is acceptable. Not because you have no standards. Not because you should tolerate disrespect. Because behavior is information. If someone wants to be unclear, let them be unclear. Then let me choose clarity. If someone wants to be inconsistent, let them be inconsistent. Then let me stop building a future around inconsistency. If someone wants to leave, let them leave. Then let me grieve without begging to be selected. This is why the theory hits emotionally. It gives people permission to stop negotiating with evidence. In family life, the book becomes more complicated. Family relationships are harder because the ties are deeper, older, and less optional. A parent may want an adult child to make safer choices. A sibling may behave selfishly. A relative may keep creating drama. A mother may feel responsible for everyone's emotional weather. A father may try to fix problems that are not his to fix. The theory tells the reader to recognize the boundary between love and control. You can love someone without managing them. You can care without interfering. You can advise without attaching your peace to whether the advice is followed. You can be present without turning yourself into the emotional operations manager of the family. This is also where the let me part matters most. If a family member is behaving badly, let them does not mean tolerate endless harm. It means stop pretending you can make them become different through pressure, panic, lectures, guilt, or emotional surveillance. Then decide your boundary. Let me leave the room. Let me stop funding chaos. Let me refuse the same argument. Let me protect my home. Let me tell the truth once and stop repeating it to someone committed to misunderstanding it. In work, the theory is both useful and dangerous. It is useful because many people waste enormous energy trying to control office politics, tone, credit, recognition, and other people's competence. Someone takes credit. Someone responds coldly. Someone ignores a suggestion. Someone chooses a worse route. Someone with authority makes a decision that looks stupid. The emotional response is often disproportionate because work is tied to status, income, identity, and future security. The theory says, let them have their mood. Let them make their decision. Let them underestimate you. Let them expose their standards. Let them show what kind of manager, colleague, or organization they are. But work is where a shallow reading can become reckless. If your boss makes an unlawful decision, if a colleague creates risk, if a process failure harms people, if silence makes you complicit, let them is not enough. The book's stronger interpretation is not ignore consequences. It is stop burning your energy on the part you cannot control, then act cleanly on the part you can. The Guardian's profile of Robbins makes this distinction clear. Robbins says, let them is not about being a doormat or resigning yourself to mistreatment. It is about recognizing what is in your control and what is not, before using let me to decide your response. That distinction is the difference between maturity and avoidance. A weak person says, let them to avoid conflict. A strong person says, let them to stop panicking, then takes the necessary action. This is the real behavioral sequence of the book. First, reality. Second, release. Third, responsibility. Reality means seeing what people are actually doing. Release means stopping the fantasy that you can control them into becoming different. Responsibility means choosing your own next move. The phrase also applies to comparison. Modern life is engineered to make people compare constantly. Social media turns everyone else's milestones into a daily performance. Someone gets the job, the body, the marriage, the house, the holiday, the attention, the book deal, the audience, the promotion, the relationship, the social proof. The instinct is to measure your life against theirs. Robbins' answer is again, let them. Let them succeed. Let them be seen. Let them be beautiful. Let them be rich. Let them move faster. Let them receive applause. Let them take the path that is theirs. Then ask, let me do what? Let me focus. Let me learn. Let me build. Let me stop confusing their timeline with my failure. Let me take the next practical step in my own life. The power of this section is that it transforms envy into instruction. Instead of treating someone else's success as evidence against you, you treat it as evidence that success exists. There is a hard edge to this. The book does not let the reader stay comfortable in blame forever. Robbins' wider philosophy has always been action-heavy. She is known for the 5-second rule, which is based on interrupting hesitation before the mind talks itself out of action. The let them theory fits that same universe. It is not simply about peace. It is about agency. The Guardian notes that Robbins frames the theory as let them followed by let me. If you might be laid off, do not waste energy spiraling. Use the part you control to update your resume, network, build skills, and prepare. That example shows the real standard. Let them lay you off does not mean do nothing. It means stop wasting your best hours trying to emotionally prevent something you cannot prevent. Let me prepare is the actual move. This is where the book becomes more demanding than its critics sometimes admit. The easy version is a mantra. The serious version is a discipline. It asks the reader to stop using other people as an excuse. If they do not support you, let them. If they do not understand your ambition, let them. If they laugh at the goal, let them. If they do not clap when you win, let them. Then let me build anyway. That is why the idea works so well for people who feel stuck. It gives them a clean separation between permission and action. You do not need the room to agree before you start moving. You do not need everyone to be emotionally ready for your growth. You do not need universal approval to make a better decision. There is also a grief hidden inside the book. Letting people be who they are often means losing the fantasy of who you wanted them to be. That is painful. It is easier to keep arguing with reality because argument preserves hope. If you are still explaining, still chasing, still proving, still managing, you can pretend the situation is not final. You can pretend one more message, one more conversation, one more performance of worth might change the outcome. The let them theory tells you to stop. Not because it does not hurt, because the cost of denial is higher. The book's deepest emotional moment is not the phrase itself. It is the surrender of false control. You cannot make someone love you properly. You cannot make a friend value you. You cannot make a parent understand. You cannot make a colleague respect what they are determined to minimize. You cannot make a stranger approve. You cannot make the internet fair. You cannot make everyone behave with the maturity you would prefer. You can only decide what their behavior now requires from you. That is the hinge. The book becomes most useful when it is treated not as comfort, but as a diagnostic tool. What are they showing me? What am I pretending not to see? What am I trying to force? What would I do if I stopped trying to control their reaction? What is my next clean action? These questions turn the phrase from self-help branding into behavioral clarity. The main ideas inside the argument. The first major idea is that control often disguises itself as care. People tell themselves they are only helping, guiding, protecting, advising, encouraging, or checking in. Sometimes that is true, but often the hidden motive is self-soothing. They want the other person to behave differently so they can stop feeling anxious. The book asks the reader to become honest about that difference. Care is generous. Control is needy. Care offers support. Control demands a result. Care respects separation. Control collapses boundaries. The second major idea is that other people's behavior is data. This is one of the strongest practical readings of the book. When someone repeatedly fails to show up, that is not a puzzle. It is information. When someone speaks to you with contempt, that is information. When someone avoids accountability, that is information. When someone supports you only when it costs nothing, that is information. Let them stops you from editing the evidence. The third major idea is that peace is not created by winning every emotional negotiation. Peace is created by no longer entering negotiations that do not belong to you. This applies everywhere: dating, family, friendship, work, social media, politics, parenting, and ambition. The book's cultural success is partly because it arrived at a time when people are constantly exposed to other people's opinions and behavior. The Washington Post argued that technology has made people hyper-conscious of others' lives, habits, thoughts, and moods, making Robbins' advice feel like a coping mechanism for modern overstimulation. That is exactly why the phrase lands. People are tired of being emotionally reachable by everyone. The central conflict inside the book. The central conflict is between control and freedom. On one side is the reader's desire to be safe, understood, chosen, respected, included, approved of, and emotionally protected. On the other side is reality. People are unpredictable, flawed, selfish, distracted, limited, wounded, immature, busy, afraid, competitive, and sometimes simply not that interested. The reader wants a world where better effort produces better treatment. The book says, that is not always the world you get. Your effort does not guarantee their maturity. Your loyalty does not guarantee their loyalty. Your explanation does not guarantee understanding. Your love does not guarantee reciprocity. Your standards do not control their behavior. This is a harsh message, but also a freeing one. If you cannot control their behavior, You are no longer required to exhaust yourself trying. The conflict then moves inward. Can you tolerate the discomfort of letting people reveal themselves? Can you stop chasing the version of them you invented? Can you allow disappointment to be evidence instead of an emergency? Can you act from self-respect rather than panic? That is the book's actual test. The turning points inside the argument. The first turning point is realizing that let them is not weakness. Many readers initially hear the phrase and assume it means passivity. Let people walk over you. Let bad behavior continue. Let injustice happen. Let standards collapse. That is the wrong reading. The phrase is not permission for them. It is permission for you to stop pretending you control them. The second turning point is realizing that let me is the missing half. This is where the theory becomes active. Once you stop trying to manage others, you must decide what responsibility now belongs to you. Let me communicate clearly. Let me set a boundary. Let me leave. Let me stay. But lower my expectations. Let me stop checking. Let me stop performing. Let me build the life I keep waiting for other people to approve. The third turning point is realizing that the theory can expose uncomfortable truths about your own behavior. It is easy to say let them about disappointing people. It is harder to ask where you have been controlling, entitled, reactive, dramatic, or addicted to approval. The book is most useful when it is not used as a weapon against others. The worst reader uses it to say, I do not care what anyone thinks. The better reader uses it to say, I am going to stop wasting energy on what I cannot control and become more responsible for what I can. The emotional journey inside the book. The emotional journey moves from exhaustion to clarity. At the beginning, the reader is overwhelmed. Too many people matter. Too much. Too many reactions feel personal. Too many choices outside the reader's control are treated as if they are urgent problems to solve. Then comes recognition. The reader begins to see the pattern. The issue is not one difficult friend, one delayed text, one annoying colleague, or one judgmental relative. The issue is the repeated surrender of inner stability to external behavior. Then comes release. This is the emotional relief of the book. It is the moment the reader realizes they do not have to carry every mood, fix every misunderstanding, solve every silence, or control every outcome. Finally comes responsibility. That is the part many people would rather skip. Once you stop blaming everyone else's behavior for your paralysis, you have to choose. That choice may be uncomfortable. It may mean ending a friendship, having a hard conversation, applying for jobs, walking away from someone attractive but inconsistent, accepting that a family member will never become the person you needed, or building without applause. The book's emotional promise is peace. Its hidden demand is adulthood. The ending explained. Because this is nonfiction, the ending is not a plot twist. It is the completion of the behavioral loop. The book begins with other people and ends with the reader. That is the meaning of let me. Let them is the doorway. Let me is the life. The ending of the argument is that freedom does not come from getting everyone else to behave properly. It comes from reclaiming the only territory that was ever fully yours: your attention, your standards, your actions, your boundaries, your effort, and your interpretation. The best version of the theory is not detached, cold, or selfish. It is emotionally disciplined. Let them be who they are. Let me be responsible for who I become next. The story anchor. The strongest story anchor is the prom anecdote Robbins has described publicly, a moment involving her son's prom, where she was trying to manage outcomes, weather, choices, and logistics, before being told to simply let them. The Guardian reported Robbins' account that her daughter Kendall told her to let the teenagers get soaked, eat tacos if they wanted, and experience the night without her micromanaging it. That story matters because it is ordinary. No one is on a battlefield. No one is making a grand philosophical argument. A parent is trying to make things go well, but underneath the helpfulness is control. The lesson is memorable because the stakes are emotionally familiar. Sometimes love becomes interference because the person doing the loving cannot tolerate uncertainty. The theory asks the parent, friend, partner, sibling, colleague, and leader to step back and let other people have their own experience. Then decide what belongs to you. If you only remember 3 ideas. The first idea, other people's behavior, is not your assignment. You can care about people without becoming responsible for every choice they make. The moment you confuse care with control, you start carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. The second idea, let them, is only half the theory. If you stop at let them, the idea can become avoidance, superiority, or emotional withdrawal. The real power is let me, because that turns release into action. The third idea, peace requires evidence-based relationships. Stop relating to people based only on their potential, your history with them, or what you wish they meant. Watch what they do. Let them show you. Then respond to the truth instead of the fantasy. The sentence that explains the entire book. Stop trying to control who people are and start taking responsibility for what their behavior now requires from you. Why this book matters. The book matters because modern life rewards emotional over-involvement. Phones make everyone available. Social media makes everyone comparable. Work makes everyone measurable. Dating apps make everyone replaceable. Politics makes everyone reactive. Family chats make everyone reachable. The result is a nervous system constantly dragged into other people's choices. The let them theory offers a simple exit ramp. Its strength is not complexity. Its strength is timing. It gives people a practical phrase for a world where attention is constantly being stolen. Its ideas will age well because the control problem is not going away. If anything, artificial intelligence, algorithmic media, remote work, digital dating, and constant comparison will make emotional boundaries more important. Misconceptions. The shallow reading is stop caring. The deeper reading is stop controlling. Those are not the same. Not caring can become numbness. Not controlling can become wisdom. The book is not strongest as a rejection of other people. It is strongest as a rejection of emotional dependency on their every move. You can still love people. You can still challenge people. You can still protect people. You can still fight for things that matter. You just stop pretending that panic gives you power. The internet often turns self-help ideas into slogans. That is useful for reach, but dangerous for meaning. Online, let them can become a petty caption under a breakup post, a superiority pose, or a way to avoid accountability. It can become a performance of detachment rather than a practice of maturity. The actual useful version is quieter. It happens before you send the angry message. It happens before you chase someone who has already shown you enough. It happens before you spend another evening explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It happens before you waste 3 hours resenting a decision you cannot change. The internet version says, I am above this. The better version says, I am responsible for my next move. The tailored interpretation. The tailored interpretation is this. The let them theory is not really a book about letting go. It is a book about power leaks. Every time you over-explain, chase, manage, beg, monitor, compare, or rehearse imaginary arguments, you leak power. Not because the other person deserves power, because you are funding their importance with your attention. The book's deepest insight is that control often feels like strength while functioning like dependency. You think you are taking charge. In reality, you are admitting that your peace depends on someone else's compliance. The strongest person in the room is not always the one who wins the argument. Sometimes it is the one who sees the evidence, accepts the loss, keeps their standards, and acts without begging reality to become softer. The real life test. The real-life test is simple. When someone behaves in a way that triggers you, pause before reacting. Ask 5 questions. What are they showing me? What part of this is actually mine to control? What am I trying to force? What would self-respect do next? What action would still make sense tomorrow? This moves the theory out of motivational language and into decision-making. In careers, it means stop obsessing over whether everyone recognizes your value and start building visible, useful results. In relationships, it means stop chasing unclear people and start requiring consistency. In money, it means stop comparing lifestyles and start improving your own habits. In leadership, it means stop trying to be liked by everyone and start creating clarity. In family life, it means stop trying to rewrite adults and start setting sustainable boundaries. How to apply the lessons without turning them into a fantasy. Do not use let them as an excuse to disappear, punish, sulk, or avoid hard conversations. Use it as a reset. First, name the behavior plainly. Second, separate what you control from what you do not. Third, choose one clean action. That action may be a boundary, a conversation, a practical plan, a reduced expectation, a documented concern, a changed routine, or a decision to walk away. The point is not to feel instantly peaceful. The point is to stop donating your best energy to an unwinnable control project. 5 questions to test whether you actually understood this book. Where in your life are you calling something care when it is actually control? Whose behavior are you still treating as a problem you can solve by explaining harder? What evidence have you been refusing to accept because accepting it would force a decision? Where have you used other people's lack of support as an excuse to delay your own action? What would let me require from you this week? The final lesson. The let them theory became huge because it gives people something they can say at the exact moment they are about to abandon themselves.